It's often one of the biggest issues that people fear when getting into open relationships. And of course, it is a difficult issue. After all, these are feelings that we've had all our lives and have affected us in many different types of relationships. Jealousy is really that feeling that you're being replaced in a relationship. And at some point or another, we've all experienced it. If you've had an earlier romantic relationship where your partner wasn't just flirting with someone else, but they really were actively looking to leave you for this other person, you've experienced jealousy, and that was a real emotion and it was appropriate for the situation. As well, even if you haven't had that, if you've had the experience of being a young child and your parents bring home a new sibling, you feel like you're being replaced. As a child, you don't understand that this baby isn't replacing you. I can tell you at 2.5, when my parents brought home my new baby sister, I was not real happy to meet her. She was, in my mind, something that was taking my place. Now, of course, she's great. I like her. But then I was not real thrilled. And of course not. It was this emotional response that I didn't know how to deal with at that age. And then if you've ever had a friend, if you were 8 years old and your best friend who you've played with all the time decides they like somebody else better to play with, you remember that feeling and you know how difficult it is to deal with. So jealousy is a very real emotion. And in monogamy, it is often an appropriate emotion if your partner actually starts having sex with somebody else. Yes, jealousy is an appropriate thing to feel because you probably are being replaced. It's breaking the agreement that you have. The problem is when we go into open relationships, the rules have changed. Now we are saying it's okay to have sex with other people or to have other emotional connections, depending on if you're doing swinging or polyamory. And so it can be confusing to feel these emotions, especially if your partner isn't really planning to leave you, has no intention of leaving you, and by all of their behaviors is showing you that they're not planning to leave you, but you still feel these emotions. And part of the problem is that we feel emotions in the part of the brain first before those feelings get to the logical part of the brain where we can start to pick them apart and think about them and decide, do they really make sense? Is this really what's happening? And it's very easy to get stuck in that emotional part of the brain and to stay there and to just revel in these emotions and kind of wallow in them. And so it's very important to make sure that you're not getting stuck in this part of the brain, which is challenging because we often think that our emotions are real, even when they're not. Even when they're just emotions, even when if we just let them go, they'll pass on through, we think that they're very real. And they're not always real. And oftentimes you have to get away from them for a moment, stop wallowing in them, and allow yourself some time to go, okay, let me get to that logical side of my brain. Let me start to analyze this. Let me start to think about it. Let me start to ask myself some questions about, wait a minute, is my partner really replacing me? Is this feeling of jealousy really appropriate? And that will help. It will help. Now, insecurity is a little bit different issue. It's very similar, but insecurity is that fear of I'm not good enough. And that is deeply embedded in people from often early ages, that they didn't feel good enough growing up. They didn't feel good enough in their family of origin. Their parents didn't let them feel good enough. They compared them to their siblings, to their cousins, whoever. Then that it can be very deeply held. And that is a little harder to deal with, but it's still possible. And it might mean at that point that if you can see logically that your partner is doing everything right, that they're keeping all the agreements you've made, that they're still giving you a lot of attention, they're making you a priority in addition to their other relationships, then it's not really them. Then it's more, what do you need to do to take care of you and to figure this out? And how do you get to deal with that insecurity that is really yours and that is affecting your relationship dynamic? And then, to be honest, you might need some professional help to deal with your deep-seated insecurity and that sense of not feeling good enough, which so many people carry around with them in our society. And it's sad to say, but it's very true. So if that's where you find yourself, then yes, you are going to probably need some help. This is probably going to be bigger than what you can deal with on your own. But think about that in the whole sense of everything, and that will help you to decide, is your jealousy appropriate, or is it just an emotion and you need to let it pass and it's going to be okay. So thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next week when we'll talk some more. Thanks. Have a wonderful day. Bye.